Well, yeah, I'm excited that your class is going to experiment with StoryMaps, and I've been using this tool for probably going on 3 years now. And as a GIS mapper, it's in the fleet of tools that Esri uses. But to be honest, I begin now to encourage people to take advantage of StoryMaps, whether they have any mapping, any data skills at all, just as probably one of the easiest website builders that students all have access to. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is just get us all signed into the Esri ecosystem. That's the app that we're going to use for StoryMaps. So I'm just going to post this link into the chat, and I guess one thing you guys may have to do is type it all out. So I can either blow it up here, those of you who are going to be doing this from looking at the screen, so you can see it, because I guess it won't do anybody but Hannah that much benefit in terms of me putting it in the chat. But if you'll type that in, what it should do is automatically log you into Esri. Now, I don't know how many of you have your own laptops are going to kind of go through this on your own as I go, but I do encourage that. I think it'll be really useful for you to get some of the experience as we go along. And I'm going to go ahead and place that link in the chat for Hannah and others. If anybody else has the Zoom on, feel free to grab it out of the chat. And you should get to a screen that looks like this. And I'll give everybody a second just to get there. It's got the website address again. And if anybody hits any trouble at any time, please don't hesitate to stop and ask for clarification. And if you are able to get to this screen, give me a thumbs up. It may take you to a UGA SSO before you get to this screen. Or if you just get to this screen, what might happen next is you get to this screen. So if y'all will let me know if you're able to get to either the prior screen or this screen, that'd be great.
Yeah, Justin, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we can get through to the University of Georgia map with the river on it.
Great. So you go to that sign in step, and then you might have seen I just clicked on the UGA SSO sign in. And then that will take you into ArcMaps. Yours won't look quite like mine, but you'll get something like this up here at the top. So it's going to automatically assign your name and a username up here in the right-hand corner. And at some point later in the future, I will add everybody who joins today to a specific group so that you can work in groups. Y'all will have the ability to do that as well. But if it's helpful for me to kind of navigate you a little bit. So anybody have any trouble logging in?
Able to log in.
And I'll go back one step. So just be sure you don't log in up here. That's if you have like a private Esri account. What you want to do is you should have something that pulls up down here, UGA SSO, or it may say, do you want to log in according to your school or institutions? If you're not on a network drive, sometimes they'll ask you to enter in your institutional HTML. If it does that, you'll just put in the letters USG in front of the HTML, and then you should be able to log in from there. Thumbs up. Working on it?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is the kind of background. So you'll design your story map in one app. And what you'll want to do is at some point, you can either bookmark the page that we're on or that original HTML that I gave you so that you can just get to it quickly. But basically up here, right next to your name is going to be this little selection of all the various apps that Esri has. And we're going to spend most of our time in ArcGIS StoryMaps. Yours is probably going to be configured a little bit differently because I've moved my apps around. But there's quite a few tools. Pretty much any of the tools that ArcGIS offers, you can insert into a StoryMap. So you can insert maps, you can insert dashboards, you can insert survey 123s, and we'll talk about each of those as we go. But if you want to kind of follow along, you can click on the ArcGIS StoryMaps, and you'll get to a page like this. You'll probably just have a blank spot where I've got a bunch of story maps already created. And we're going to create a new story. Now, before we dive into creating it, I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of story maps just to navigate you through the tools and then show you how easy it is to build from there. But you're going to click on New Story. And then we're going to start from scratch. Feel free later on if you want to play around with some of these templates. I may talk about these a little bit later, but really everything you need to know to build one, you can just do right from an empty blank page. Okay, so you can see this is the way all websites start, right? Blank page. Before we do that, I just want to show you a couple of story maps to give you an idea of the flow. I know most of you have probably seen these before. For y'all's class, I've already talked quite a bit about UGA's pollinator program, and I built this example of a story map last year just to give you an idea of how kind of quickly and easily you can build it. The ability to create these basically ways to skip to different areas of your story map. At the top, tabs essentially to navigate around is really intuitive. We'll look at that in just a second. Or basically the way story maps work is they are all on one page. So it doesn't ever take you to a new page. It's basically scrolling down. One of the best features, of course, is the way that images kind of scroll across the entire page. And so you'll see here, I just shot a very simple, like 15 seconds of, or less, maybe 5 seconds of video of what one of the survey 123s look like for the pollinator survey. What's great about this is it gives your audience a way to get really quick snapshots of things as they're kind of scrolling down and getting more and more complex information as they go through. That's, of course, just a QR code to our census. Now, I know one of the groups, the group that I'm going to be working with, is actually looking at possibly doing a survey 123. Well, I've embedded a survey directly into the story map. And so you can see an example of that. You can actually complete this survey right here in the story map. You can also access it via QR code if it's easier for them to fill out on a phone. But this gives you a general idea of what our census look like. The Survey 123 is another really useful tool that you can also get to now that you're logged into Esri. I'm a little more advanced, not planning on getting very far into that tool today, but if you have questions, we can kind of circle back to that a little bit later. In a second, we'll see how easy it is to embed these various videos as you go through. Things like this, section breaks. You can see as I'm scrolling through, anytime there's a section break, it'll highlight in red, the tab that you're now under. And, not everybody has to use maps, but StoryMaps is really great for the use of maps. This is actually a map that is embedded into the page, so you can navigate around. You can scroll in and scroll out. And there's even some ways to build a map so that you can do queries and you can go to certain areas that you're doing queries on, all within the story map. So story maps are great because they're really engaging. It gives you a lot of tools that you can add, interactive tools, I should say, that you can put right in there. And here's one more example of a slide map that shows a little heat map where we have census takers. So, well, let's get into the fun part, which is how do you actually build from scratch a story map? So those of you who do have laptops and want to follow along, I'm going to build a simple story map today and just show you how easy it is as long as you have some content, some text, and some images. Everything is drag and drop. So the very first thing I did is just that you want to add a cover. And so I've got this cover. I haven't done any prep today in terms of what the content is I'm going to build. So we're just going to kind of make this up as we go. Because it's drag and drop, we'll be able to pull things in directly from our files and folders on our computer. There's also ways that you can browse for things directly on the web or that you have stored elsewhere in Esri, but it's usually easiest just to drag and drop things like this. So I will take this pretty shot right here and drag it in and hit add. And now, since this is going to be the main thing, the kind of the splash page that folks will get to when they come to your page, I'm going to look at some of the options in terms of how you can arrange this on the page. And I'll be honest, it's funny, I'm going to move around a little bit and try and refresh my memory on the exact ways to do things as we go. So I think you go up here to design, if I recall right. So once you have that image in here, you hit design. What this does is allow you to look at a couple of different options for just the layout of the whole story map. So you can see you've got a nice layout with a picture on the right, text on the left. This is actually what we use for our campus arboretum sites. One of my favorites is this full shot. And it basically puts the title then right on top. I'll show you one other little trick that you can do is you can actually invert where you have your title, depending on where it looks best. It might look best at the top or the bottom of the page. So I'm going to go ahead and put here, call this write a quick title. I usually do erase my name. It'll automatically add your name, as I guess it has for those of you who've followed along. And then there's a couple other things I do under the design tab that are important. If you want to have any navigation, if you're going to have multiple sections, you want to go ahead and add that navigation there. And then I do always keep a credits. Credits is good just to give thanks for anybody that is a part of your project, or I often use credits to put some of my references so that I don't have to embed those at various points throughout the entire story map. And then you'll see there's quite a few options in terms of some kind of different themes, mainly colors for your story map. So let's go ahead and make it dark. Actually, I think dark kind of creates a professional look. If you want to get really fancy, you can upload a little logo and it'll put it right up in the left-hand corner next to the name of your story map. So sometimes I do that for our formal sustainability sites, but we're not going to do that today. So you can see we're already off to a pretty good start. It looks pretty good just with the items that we have there. If you need to adjust where that photo sits on your page, you can do, let's say you want it so that the river is really, at the center of the foreground. You can move it around using this settings option here. And it will move things around. I guess my picture is not quite big enough for it to do very much of that motion. But if you've got a bigger picture, you can make some adjustments there. And it nicely shows you what it's going to look like on somebody's phone as well. I think that's it for the very top page, or the cover art anyway. And now we're going to get into the body. So it gives you a little reminder here that in order to create your navigation links, any text that you put in, you're going to want to give it a heading. So let's just type some text. And we'll just start with introduction. So once it's in there, you want to highlight it, and that's what gives you access to all your text tools. So if we go to headings here, all right, I got to move around some of my Zoom tools. You'll notice as soon as I gave it a heading 1, it automatically added it to the navigation pane right there, which is exactly what I wanted. You can play around a little bit with colors because we're on a black background. White's probably going to work best. For some, I guess it doesn't allow you to do bold or italic since it's a heading, but you can center the text and move the text around the page. So then you just hit return. Now, if you want to just type, you don't even have to go to a text box. You can just say, write what you want. But you can also go over here to the plus sign, and this shows you all of the tools for the various things you can add to the story map. So let's just go through a few of them. If you write text, it's actually going to start with exactly what the default is. If you hit the return, then you can add a button. You can type things into that button. And then you can hyperlink to it if you want it to take you to another site. Well, I'm not going to play around with all of these today, so we'll play around with a few of them and then kind of get to the more important ones as we go. There's a separator. When you get to the end of the section, sometimes that's useful. You can change the color of these as well. And then we're going to get into tables in a different way. You can add a table that you kind of lay out in here, but I'm going to show you how to embed a spreadsheet or table, because essentially you're able to create a makeshift dashboard in your StoryMap by creating your spreadsheet in a Google sheet and then using an embed code. So I'll show you how to do that here in a second. Now, if you do end up making a map of some kind in ArcGIS, so this wouldn't be for, if you want to do something simple like embed a Google map or something like that, we'll get to that in a second. But if some of you already have GIS experience and you have a map, we'll talk about how to navigate the maps part of ArcGIS in a minute. See, I've got quite a few maps here. I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. There's nothing really advanced to it other than, I guess I'll just go ahead and drop one in just to show you how simple it is. Because once you have a map, you can change the parameters of the map according to how the map was initially designed versus maybe what you want it to display in the final. And you do that within this map builder here, and then you simply place it. And then once it's placed, you can change the size and positioning of that map. You actually would change the location or the starting place that the map begins in that prior screen in the map builder. But you could make it a little tiny map. You could even put it way over here on the corner if it's doesn't need to take up that much space. All kinds of interesting ways to add a map here if some of y'all are into doing that. I know the group that I'm going to be working with is going to be mapping Nandina. Almost certainly we'll have some ArcGIS maps that you can work with. So let me pause before I go on because I can talk real fast the whole day. Does anybody have any questions so far?
If you have questions, it should be picked up by
Okay.
I guess one question I have is if we wanted to create a story map that wasn't going to be hosted on a UGA server, are they transferable? Or does it have to be hosted at UGA?
That's an interesting question. I mean, the good thing about using our Esri license is these story maps will be preserved forever as long as we maintain our Esri license. I don't know if we're concerned about the story maps disappearing, but they don't disappear with the student account that creates it. Actually, it's very important to me that any of our story maps we create, we have continuity and those continue to exist. So I add them all to Esri groups before students leave, and then they're permanently in there. In fact, I've even taken a second step of adding them to a digital archive in our library so that not only do they exist, but people have access to them through, simple search engine on our library homepage. So is that helpful?
Yeah, this was about the trail map. So like if we wanted a link from like Athens Clarke County government, we could just link to the story map, but it would be hosted on a UGA domain.
Yes. It's funny because it's not necessarily a UGA domain. The cloud service is all Esri, so there's nothing like tagged within the HTML to make it UGA specific. I'm not really sure. I've assumed we will always have an Esri license. So I can't think of a reason why any of those domains would ever disappear. And then they're very simple links, so they're easy to share out with everybody in perpetuity. So does that answer your need, Richard?
I think so. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I mean, we can always return to these things. I may be giving you partial answers for some things, and happy. I will be working with y'all every step of the way as we go. I'm not going to show you how to drop an image in here. Well, maybe I should, just because there's a couple of things that you can do here that are slightly different from putting it in at the top. You know, the same way that map can be kind of moved around to different locations on the page, this can as well. This image is too small to blow it up to go across the whole page, but if you have a big, really nice image, in other words, a lot of pixels, it'll actually spread it across the entire page. And that's a really nice feature within StoryMaps. Let's see what it does if you try and fit it to screen. No, I think this one's too small. So, and yep, nothing else we need to do with this particular image. Let's get into a few of the more interesting things. So, one thing that I like to do is this feature called slideshow. So, I mean, you can just go down the page with text, image, but one of the best features of StoryMap is this thing called Sidecar. So if you do a sidecar, it gives you a couple of different options. And those of you who are more familiar with StoryMaps have probably seen this before, where it's basically without you scrolling down the page, it just fixes the frame. And then you can have it transition almost like animated image rolling into a new image. And then you can have multiple text boxes over the top. You've got floating, docked. I usually like floating because floating allows a little box of text to go right over the top. And then slideshow, I'm not wild about because basically if you have a bunch of pictures, people can advance the picture by hitting on the arrows. But I feel like people often don't see those little arrows. So I use a scrolling type sidecar instead. And so here's what the sidecar layout looks like. So just like everything else, you'll just start by adding an image. And actually, I don't want to browse my files. I want to drag and drop is always going to be easier than adding files. So if you can get to a window where you've got some good files, some images that you can do. So we'll start with this nice little logo of our geography green roof. Probably going to spread that across the whole page, but that's okay. You'll get the general idea. And then you can see how this little text box then allows you, this is really where you get into some of the storytelling elements, right? So you can say, you know, I'll just do some abbreviations. The geography green roof started on such and such, something like that. And then what may happen is you may want to have a couple of little tidbits of information on the same image before it changes images. So remember, this is like going to be kind of a fixed screen for a second. You're basically like imagine it's like a section of your total story map. And so what you want to do then is if you want to have another floating text, you'll hit duplicate. And then all it's done is it's made two of that exact box. So if the intro is telling the background, on your second one, you can say, you know, we've had 29 students work on the garden. And then you don't want to stay on the same image forever, right? That'll get boring. So you go to plus, and then you can add a new image. And as your story kind of goes along, you can have the pictures change with it. This is funny. So this is my daughter's artwork. This is going to be a little bit of a nonsensical structure here today, but that's all right. Hopefully you guys will be buying my daughter's graphic novels in a decade or so. And then, you know, I'll say this about StoryMaps. There's quite a bit you can do with changing the layout, and then there's a few limitations as well. So let me give you an example of that. Let's say I want to really tell y'all a lot about my daughter's artwork, and these little squares is too skinny of an area. So you can go up here and you can widen that box. Let's see, it's down here at the bottom, and give it more space across the page. You can move that box around so that it's on the left side or on the right side, and you can change the color of the box. It could be clear, a gray color or back to the black color. So not a ton of options, but enough options to keep things kind of give it some variation, which is nice. I'm trying to think if there's any other tools here that I'm not mentioning. Duplicate sidecar. That's about it. I will say sidecars are really nice features, especially if you want to give some background information. I think you might have noticed that it does a nice little transition between the pictures, you know, so that they kind of fade into each other. And that's a fun one to play around with. As you can see, this is really, I hate to say it this way, but it's idiot proof, right? I mean, you can build these out with very little specialized training at all. Okay, so that sidecar is down here. I'm not even going to go through slideshows. I kind of talked about that before, but feel free to play around with that as well. The next thing I want to get into, though, is the embed. So the embeds are really, really useful. So y'all are going to have to forgive me because I didn't pull this up before we started, but I assume most of you or all of you are using Google Drive, Google Docs for things. I think there are ways to do this within a Microsoft ecosystem too, but I just find it much easier to do this stuff in Drive myself. So I'm going to pull up one of my dashboards. Let's see if I can find a good one. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for. So, and this will be a little bit interesting, kind of interesting content to use. Actually, I think this is maybe an old one. Let me use my newer one. So let's say you've collected some data. No, that's not the newer one. Let's see. But I guess it doesn't matter, although it would look better if I've got all my graphs. Let me see here. Apologies, I didn't have this pulled up for y'all in advance. Let's see, let me do UGA. Here we go. This should be the one. So let's say you collect some data and you create some nice charts, and you'd like to put them in there. Now you can do those just as an image, but what is exciting about StoryMaps and just data visualization in general these days is that you can make your data where there's some interaction that can happen. So this is actually 10 years of greenhouse gas emissions for UGA's campus. And I'll show you how it works right here in the spreadsheet. And then I'll show you that you can basically do these exact same things in the StoryMap. So you can go in here and change the date of the data, and it will update in real time what the tonnage of CO2 is for each of the 11 categories that we have according to that year. And so you can see, you know, a little bit of variation in that. And then you can embed that into the StoryMap so that people can do exactly what I did right there within the StoryMap. So the way that you're going to do that, and this will be recorded so you don't have to memorize this. You can come back and look at it later. But you're going to go to File, Share, Publish to Web. So File, Share, Publish to Web. You guys may not have anything you can kind of do this along with me on. And then because we're going to embed it, we go to this little Embed tab. Now, what's cool is you can embed all of your tabs of data, or if you just have one tab that's relevant, in this case, it's the annual summary, you can just embed the one tab. And so that's what I'm going to do here. Hit Publish. It's always going to ask you, are you sure you want to publish this? Sure you want to make your data public? And yes, we do. And so once you get to the embed code, that's all you need now to insert that into the StoryMap. Embed codes are really useful for a lot of things. We're going to go through this exact same process for YouTube video here in just a second. So now we've got the embed code. We just go back here, and I'll start over with what I did to get to that embed section. So you go to plus, add, that is, go down to embed, and you just have this empty box, and you're simply going to paste that iframe into that box. And ta-da, we now have that spreadsheet embedded in this document. Now, to make it even better, you can click it, and it's probably not going to let me do this in the since we're in edit mode right here, I have to publish this before it'll let me actually go in here and play around with these numbers. But you'll actually be able to, you can see how the interaction's already there a little bit, and that you can roll around the different numbers of this donut chart or over here and see exactly what those figures are. Once this is published, you would be able to change the year and see the different figures for the different year. This is one of my favorite tools, you know, because building formal dashboards using GIS data is a little bit of a challenge for early users. This is kind of a shortcut, a way to build a makeshift dashboard into your StoryMap. Don't think there's anything else there. Yeah, if you do try and put it into kind of a small corner, it won't show it. A certain size, obviously, you can't really take advantage of that tool. So that's a nice one. Let me now do a video and see if I can find something related to another one of our climate solution projects. So we're really into e-mobility here at UGA right now. Just got $5 million of funding from Georgia Power, and did a cluster hire of 10 students. So we're doing a lot with that. It may, now whether you're, whether you're generating your own videos, which I highly recommend, that many of you probably uploaded a little video to YouTube, or you're just wanting to embed something else in there. Once it's there, it's really as simple as just taking the HTML code, although I'll show you in a second the way to get the embed code, and it might work a little bit better. But let's go back to this, and I'm trying to remember, I think you just go to, yeah, the video, upload link. So I'll do that again since I did it kind of fast. You go to add video. Now, if you have like an MP4 on your computer, you can drag and drop it right there, and it will store the whole MP4. I don't think there's any size restrictions on that. And then for the link, I'll show you how quickly and easily it puts this up here. There we go. Again, you can kind of change the size and the location of it. You can make it really tiny. This little button here, I think, turns it into a card. So sometimes when you make things kind of minimized, it puts it into a card form. I'll be honest, the embed way doesn't really give you a whole lot more flexibility. I think if you do the embed way versus this way, it gives you a little bit of options in terms of the size that you would make the window. But usually this size or the default size options work just fine. I don't think there's no more options under the settings button. All right, so we've covered dashboards, sidecars, images, text, and what was the one we, oh, okay. And so we'll do the citations at the bottom and videos. That is about, 80% of what you're going to do. I'll show you, how to take advantage of the credits down here at the bottom, and then we'll get into, I'll pause for a second allow for some questions, and then we may do a little more advanced tutorial on the maps for those of you who may have a little experience with maps. For the credits, one thing I would encourage, and especially for this class, I guess I'll go ahead and encourage y'all that we are trying to create project work that lasts the test of time, that will be something that will be useful to everybody at UGA into the future. In fact, I'll go ahead and show this to you because this might inspire you to try and create a product that people would want to look at for a long time. I'll tell you what, let me cheat a little bit and go to here. About a year ago, we created UGA's first digital archive. It's in the same location where all the theses and dissertations are stored in any published work by anybody from UGA. And I think there's been some others that have created collections since then, but the goal here is to create sustainability works that will be accessible to people forever into the future. I'm trying to think if I've got a story map up here already. I think I do. Let me see. I think it's under Campus Arboretum. And story maps really lend themselves to being stored and protected in this way so that people can build on your work. Let's see, how do I get to it? So I have to click on this. Sorry, guys. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this could be better how you link to it. But we've got all the story maps that we've ever done for our Arboretum walks. And getting back to Richard's point about like, how do we know these are going to be, as long as UGA pays its license fee to Esri, these will be around forever, which I expect they'll be around forever. So we have, I think we're up to about 11, campus walks right now that would introduce you to all the trees like around Lake Herrick. It's pretty nice. And once they're in that digital archive system, they're in there forever. Now, the reason that's important, and I'll go back to this now, is that you want to provide resources that allow people to really see how you did what you did. And so including the most relevant papers, so putting, the way you would a citation, doesn't have to be as complete as you might when you're publishing a paper, but as complete as you can get it, title and author, and then a link. Now, you can either do that on both sides, or you can simply attach the link to the citation. And I've gotten in the habit, I don't know if I've got that on the pollinator page, but I've gotten in the habit of trying to do this for all of my projects, just because I want people to be able to pick that up and carry it on moving forward. And we, when we're looking for things that are worthy to be loaded up to the archive, we can talk about that in more detail later, but that's one of the things that we hope to find is a real tracking of the works that contributed to your work. I'm going to pause for a second, and then we can circle back to maps. But what other questions do y'all have at this point?
Don't think we have any here.
It's pretty amazingly easy, right? I mean, I know I'm making it look easy, but it really is as easy as it looks. Okay. Well, I'll keep trucking along with the map portion. And then before I do that, let me ask this question. Does anybody in the course already have some GIS mapping experience?
Yeah, we have a few in the room. Yep.
Terrific. One thing I like about StoryMaps and the Esri tools in general is it kind of demystifies GIS mapping. I mean, let's face it, you look at a GIS map and you just think, I could never do something like that. I think if we have time, and Richard, you tell me how much time you want to take on this. We didn't really talk about that in advance, but I can basically show you how to build a pretty simple map from scratch if that's worth it, or if y'all don't think many people will do that, we could kind of wrap up here in a couple of minutes.
Well, yeah, maybe what we'll do is sort of us to sort of follow up with you on how to build the maps, because I think this has given us kind of the bare bones of how we would create these pages. I did have one question. So, you know, from the perspective of these groups, these are going to be sort of team projects, and so if a group is working on a story map, like, is there a way to share it so that everyone can edit, or is it kind of linked to one individual's account? Like,
Great question, Richard. Thanks. I'm glad we didn't forget to cover that. So this is one of the best things about the Esri system, is it's really, the whole thing is laid out so that you can work together on projects. So what you would want to do is, and this is actually very important, you probably need to watch this part pretty carefully, because if I don't create the groups for you, I don't know how many people are going to be working on story maps. If it's just one group, I'd be happy to do this for you. But if it is going to be multiple, just watch carefully as I create a group. And I tell you what, I'll go ahead and do this for the Nandina group. Since I know I'll be working with y'all, I'm just kind of planning on helping you with that anyway. So let's slide my Zoom tools around. So once you go into this tab, groups up at the top, you'll create a group. Nandina team, do y'all want a team name other than Nandina? We can always change it later, but got any great ideas?
That'll work for now.
Okay. Well, if you got an idea, shout it out. I can put it in right now. But we're going to save the UGA campus from bird killing Nandina. And then, you know, if you want this to be searchable at some point, you can put in as many tags as you want. You know, you could put in cedar waxwing, whatever tags that you want to be searchable by this. You want the, so you only want group members in your group. And then who can be in this group? When it says organization members, that just means people that are part of the UGA Esri license. So we'll just keep it on the default there. How can people join this group? Looks like by invitation is the only option. And who can contribute content? You definitely want to be sure all group members can. And then this is the most important thing. So if you're going to be a part of a group that's going to create your own on this, other than the Nandina group, you must click shared update. Shared update is really what allows everybody in the group to edit and find all the materials in the folder. And then everything that you add into that folder immediately becomes findable and editable by every other group member. So if you create a group that doesn't have shared update, you can put things into it till the cows come home. Everybody won't be able to see it and edit it. So that's really the most important part of creating a group. And then it's really just as simple as adding maps, story maps, and other tools to that. Now, I guess now we got to invite some members. So let's see if everybody's name shows up from entering into the Esri system today. Do y'all mind just shouting out the names of the people in the Nandina group? Sam? Maybe last names first. Sorry, I'm not quite getting that.
Patterson.
One more time.
Patterson.
Oh no, I don't. For some reason it's cutting off.
Yeah. Let me put it in the group.
Okay. I only need one name just to kind of show you how this will work. And actually, once I add this first person, that person can add all the rest of you. So, because this will happen instantaneously. Cool. Sam Patterson. Yeah, it was cutting off. The mic was cutting off on the first and last part of what y'all are saying. Is that you, Sam? Okay, cool. So, sorry, I got to move my Zoom tools around again. So I'm going to add you to the group. And now, Sam, if you'll like update your page, just refresh your page, or even just go into groups, you should see Nandina team there, and you will be able to invite all the other members. You know, I'm going to, this should already be in there. I'm going to go ahead and add to your group this ecology service story map, even though there's nothing to it, but just to show you how that works. So I hit a check mark on that, add item. And look at that. So now you've got a group with a name and at least one member, 2 members, because I'm automatically a member, and your first item. So so it's as simple as that. I mean, I agree, Richard. I think maybe doing a map tutorial as a separate tutorial would be a good idea. And you know, could maybe even be most beneficial if we do that in the context of like something specific we're building out.
Great. Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. And we, you know, through the semester, we have open class periods for any group or group that might want to chat with you about maps.
Mm-hmm. You guys feeling confident and raring to go with the StoryMap after that?
Yes, always.
I think they can be really beautiful, and I don't think there's an easier way to create a more dynamic web presence for these types of topics. So I wish you guys a lot of luck. I can't wait to see what you do. Don't hesitate to email me or call me if you get stuck with something. We do have a couple of our interns that have some skills with StoryMaps too. So if I'm busy and don't get back quick, I may refer you to a couple of them, and we'll get you somebody that can help. So don't allow yourself to get stuck.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time. That was awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm glad you guys asked. I hope this recording will be useful to others too. I will put the recording somewhere. Maybe I'll tell you what, just because you will know where it is. For now, I'll put it inside this ecology service story map as an embedded video, and then y'all share it with your colleagues. If you need it in a different form, let me know, and we'll make sure it's available to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Bye.